opinions and experiences shared in this podcast are just that, our personal opinions and experiences, and may not reflect official standards of practice. This podcast does not take the place of professional therapy. If you are struggling with mental health, please reach out to a provider near you. The subjects discussed in this podcast may include trauma, abuse, alcohol and drug abuse, anxiety, depression, suicide, and other subjects that may cause emotional reactions. We may also use language not suitable for young ears. The purpose of this podcast is to have frank discussions about mental health in order to show people it's okay to think differently, give people power to change their own lives, and break down barriers between mental health professionals and the rest of the world. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the Good to Hear podcast. We're going to be talking about our experiences with mental health and how we handle it. I'm your host, Melissa. I'm 27 and I'm a mental health therapist. Been doing it for about 3 years. Yeah, that's me. And I have two guests with me today. Amy, you want to?
Sure. My name is Amy and I'm 32. I work at a counseling center in the office and also as a mental health technician.
Mm-hmm. And you were
And I was a 911 dispatch supervisor operator for the past 10 years and wanted something less stressful.
All right. And then we've got
Amber. I am 26. I'm currently in school to be a counselor, and I'm an intern at Forward Counseling, and I've been doing that for like 6 months now.
Yeah. All right. So our topic today is one that I can't really relate to, but it's about siblings raising siblings. So you guys have each had family experiences that are kind of not the normal white picket fence-ish type situation. And I think that is really common these days, that not that families are broken. I don't think that, maybe that's not the right word, but
Not traditional.
non-traditional.
No,
There
yeah,
we go. That's a nicer word. Non-traditional family. And so, yeah, you do have kind of older siblings raising younger siblings for a variety of reasons. So we'll just start with whoever wants to start and kind of talk a little bit about, your story, how you ended up raising your siblings and how that's been. And yeah, who wants to start?
I'm nominating Amy.
Okay. Let's see. Well, since my siblings were born, I kind of just naturally was in the role. I was like 6 or 7, and I really, really wanted a sister or brother and begged my mother for one. She was a single mom, but she was dating my now sibling's father at the time. And along came my sister. I was about 8, and I kind of took care of her since then. I just would carry her around like a little baby doll, and my mom just kind of let me. She was busy working. Both of them were actually pretty busy working, and then they had a not so great relationship, so we were homeless for a while, just the 3 of us, and they kept making up, and along came my brother a couple years later. So I kind of just would take care of him, especially when my mom left him for good. And when I was younger, I didn't mind it. I loved it. But then as I got to be a teenager, I hated it. And it ended up being more and more where at the time, I was like, I'm stuck with them. Mm-hmm. So and my mom got into some drugs, and I left when I was 15 and abandoned them, I guess.
According to them.
Well, I felt like it, and we lived in the same town. I just moved into an apartment, and it was a small town. It was like 5,000 people. And so they would come visit. And so I was still around, just not in the same house. And things kind of got worse and worse. And when I was 20, I went back and I moved around a lot. And then I just decided I'd step in and petition for guardianship. And that was that. I raised them. They were 9 and 13, and I was 20.
And you were awarded full guardianship?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. I went through a free lawyer type system. And he said guardianship would probably be best because custody is a long, drawn-out thing, and she still had responsibilities, and so it would be more like shared. But I did have full responsibility, which was very different because I went and did it on my own. Social services wasn't involved or anything. So there was no help from like the state or from any guidance. I was just completely on my own. I read books. I had no idea really what I was doing or what I was getting myself into. And then because she was a bit unstable on drugs, our relationship collapsed. Like she hated me, accused me of stealing them. And,
Wow.
we tried to do co-parenting, which failed miserably. And we didn't talk for a good 8 years, probably.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until the kids were older. And they stayed living with me until 2018. So after they were 18.
Yeah. So just recently.
So, yep, it was before I moved. They moved out.
Yeah.
So,
Is your relationship better with your mom now?
it's better as in we speak to each other. I mean, I was scared of her actually for a long time. So I ended up going through therapy myself because I didn't even realize there was an issue. And the kids, we all went through therapy, all three of us. And through that, I worked on, what kind of relationship I wanted to have with her, very boundaried and distant when she was sober. And so now I talk to her once every month or 2-3 months. So it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not not a great relationship, but
Yeah. And what about their dad?
Chris was probably like 2 years old when they officially separated for good. We ended up moving out of state. We were in California, and we ended up moving to North Dakota. And so he was out of the picture completely. My brother didn't even know his dad's name. Like, he was kind of confused. They had another brother and sister from his previous marriage. And so they didn't really get to see that side of the family. I mean, we were moving constantly. And we were so far away. No one wants to come visit North Dakota. And we didn't have money necessarily to, send them back to California to go visit.
Right.
And time just flew. And I mean, when I left, I was between 15 and 20, I would talk to them on the phone. They'd come visit. But a lot of the time, since I was gone, they would go and be with friends a lot of the time because my mom still worked. She always kept a job or a couple jobs. So they ended up kind of doing their own thing and running on the streets. And then my mom ended up with another boyfriend. I forgot about him, who was an alcoholic at the time. And so like she never really... He wasn't a kid person. He didn't have kids or anything.
Yeah.
So it was just a mess. There's just so much that went on.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So I guess it's my turn.
Amber, yeah. Go for it.
So it's a little bit different. I was never like legal guardian or anything, but my mom, my mom got remarried when I was 9, and was immediately pregnant with my younger brother Jay, and he was born. Well, I guess I was 10 because he was born when I was 11. And then a couple of years later, they had Brad. And my mom was in nursing school and working nights as well. And my stepdad was working during the day and was essentially never around at night. I really don't know what he was doing. He was just off doing his own thing. He wanted kids, but he didn't want to raise them. He felt like it was the woman's job to raise the kids.
Oh.
And since mom was working and gone all night for nursing school,
You're
and
the other
everything,
woman.
I was the other woman. And it was essentially from 11 my job to take care of the kids, even though I was, barely old enough to consider myself not a kid anymore. And they would leave me at home all night some nights when I was like 12, 13 with an infant and a toddler. And I had no idea what I was doing. I'm sure fucked up quite a bit. But, I did what I could do as a kid raising a kid. And, I felt much like you did. When I was young, I loved it. I loved having them. I loved being with them. But as I got closer to my teenage years and I wanted to go start having my own life, I didn't have that possibility because somebody had to be home with the kids. And if stepdad's off doing whatever it is that he's doing and mom's at work, I have to be home. I had no other choice. And I was also homeschooled. So I was at home all day too. So I was with them 24/7 essentially, and it was rough because it was like I wanted to be a normal 13-year-old, and I basically had 2 children that I had to carry around with me everywhere. Couldn't drive, but I had 2 children, and it was a really confusing kind of thing because who decided that was an okay thing to do to a 13-year-old with a 2-year-old and a 9-month-old? And there was an incident where Brad fell and hit his head and started throwing up, which is, a sign of a concussion. And I'm at home by myself and I have no way to contact anybody at all.
This is pre-cell phones.
Yeah, pre-cell phones. And we didn't have a landline either because because we were struggling and my mom was still in nursing school, and at that point my stepdad wasn't even working anymore. He had lost his job because he would literally steal everything that wasn't tied down. So he'd lost his job, and it was just what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to get him medical help or figure out if he's okay or not? I don't have any way to contact anyone, and I can't go anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
So,
because you were in a small town too, right?
Yeah. Well, we were in the outskirts of Memphis. So, I guess my options were to go to a neighbor, but the area that we lived in was not a good one. Right. So it was not really the best of options unless I wanted to possibly get shot walking up on someone else's property. Right. So, I didn't really have any other options. And that was kind of what I dealt with until I was 19 and I moved off for college. Me and my brothers are still really close, really, really close. They text me almost daily. My mom's and mine relationship was not great. We fought a lot because I felt like she was putting a lot of her responsibilities on me.
No.
Right? You decided to have these kids. I didn't. They're not my children. Why am I having to be the one to take care of them all the time? Why am I raising your kids? You decided to have them. I didn't. And that was just kind of my mindset until I moved out. And then I was like, oh, well, I still don't love the fact that she did that, but I love the time that I got to spend with my brothers. And because of that, we're super, super close. So, you win some, you lose some, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my experience growing up was totally different. 2-parent household. My mom fluctuated between working and not working. Just, I guess, depending on where we were in that phase of life, or if she just needed to take care of us. There's not a big age gap. Maybe that's the big thing, because you guys have a big age gap between you and your younger siblings. And so I'm a middle child. My older brother is 3 years older than me, I think. And my younger brother is about 2.5 years younger. So we're kind of spaced out. And we had the responsibility of taking care of each other, and looking out for each other. That was something that my parents really impressed upon us, was that friends will come and go. People in your life are going to come and go, but your family is always there. You will always have your siblings. At the end of the day, your siblings will always have your back.
Yeah.
And that's how they wanted us to be. And that's kind of how we still are. We still hang out and talk and stuff. My family is weirdly close. People
Can't relate.
call us weird all the time. Like, yeah, it's just weird.
I love it.
But, yeah, it is really nice. And so I kind of think about like, man, how would my life have been different if I was the oldest, having to take care of 2 younger brothers? Because, man, they fought, and like, not like all the time, but like siblings fight. And
Oh my God, yes.
as you know, as the middle child, I was like peacekeeper anyway. So like trying to get them to not fight, they were like, who the fuck are you? Like, go away. You're not my mom. So I can't imagine like no one else being around. Because if I couldn't get them to calm down, I'd be like, Mom, and just like yell for somebody else, or tattle on them when my parents got home. And we were, so I was gonna say left alone a lot, but like not a lot. Like after school, it was us, and then my parents would come home for work, because getting out at 2:00, most parents don't get off work until like 5 or 6.
Right.
So we had that time to kind of be by ourselves, and we had to, take care of ourselves. And I think that's important. I don't think kids these days have that, like autonomy and independence. I think people are too scared to leave their kids alone now for one reason or another. So I know that has kind of probably been very helpful in like fostering independence and self-reliance and healthy attachment with parents. I don't need them to always be around, and I know that they're coming back. But I like, yeah. So how do you guys feel like your lives differed from like the norm, I guess? And what do you feel like you missed out on, or ways that you feel like you learned and grew that are like positive, I guess? I always try to see the positive in shitty situations. So like, and there are good things that can come out of really crappy things. So how do you feel like this affected your life with friends and dating and school and things you wanted to do?
Wow. I haven't thought about that. I kind of just skipped childhood and was just always super responsible, which is normal for the oldest who ends up in this type of situation. But I don't feel like I missed out on anything. I don't regret anything. I don't wish anything was different. I wouldn't do anything different. And I think it was because I had those 5 years where I was out on my own. And even though I was living the life of an adult, I had a boyfriend, and we would, do things with friends that was normal kid stuff. So I kind of had a few years where I explored, what I wanted to do. And then when I was like 18, 19, 20, I was like, well, what's the purpose of my life? What kind of...
Yeah, those big questions.
Yeah. And I had friends, and I dated, and I feel like that was enough for me. And then I went back, and even though 20 is young, I thought about it. I mean, ever since I left when I was 15, actually, the lawyer that I ended up being emancipated legally. I just did everything by the books. And the lawyer that helped me get emancipated was like, hey, when you're 18, you can come back. And she was the first one who told me about guardianship and custody and all that, if things didn't change.
How did you know about like emancipating? Because I don't think 15-year-olds really like even know how to spell that word.
I don't know. I mean, it was only a couple years before that the internet even came out. I don't recall how
We sound so old.
I know.
Pre-cell phones. This is back before the internet came out.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a cell phone when I moved out. I remember being so excited when I moved into my apartment and getting a landline. And my mom had actually put the landline in our house under my name and my social and all that. So like I had debt. I owed the phone company $200 when I went to open up my own landline, which she actually paid me back. So
wow.
Yeah, I was like, hey, what's going on here? And she's like, oh yeah, I'll pay you back. But I don't know. I don't feel like I missed out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you?
I definitely feel like I missed out on stuff. I never really, like, I got to experience childhood until I was 11, and then it was just like, and you're an adult.
So you got a taste of it, and then they're like, nope.
Yeah.
No more.
No more. You're not a child. You're an adult now.
At 11.
At 11. And, you know, I wanted to do the normal high school stuff where, you know, go to football games and prom and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't get to, for several reasons, not just because I had to take care of my brothers, but also stepdad was super controlling and didn't want me to do anything or go anywhere or be outside of the house ever, which was super fun. So I definitely feel like I missed out on stuff. Do I regret it? Not necessarily. I don't think me and my brothers would be as close as we are if anything had changed. I don't think I would be in psychology and counseling if I didn't have to go through all of that too. Because it was being with them, and, you know, with Jay, he's on the autism spectrum, and Brad is severely ADHD, also has a lot of anger issues. It really kind of sparked a passion for kids and advocating for stuff like that, because when they first started school, they were going to a private Catholic school, and they had no, like, you know, special education classes or anything like that, any kind of resources to help them at all.
Accommodations.
Yeah.
No,
nothing. And it did not go well at all. And we pulled them out after preschool and kindergarten and started homeschooling them as well. And at that point, my mom and stepdad's relationship was terrible from the beginning, and lots of red flags that she should have seen, but she didn't, because, you know, love makes you stupid, and you'll deal with a lot for what you think is going to be a good thing in the end. But it just didn't go well, and it didn't get any better. It only got worse. And then we moved out to Coldwater, Mississippi, which is like, if you blink, you miss it kind of place. We have a stoplight and a dollar store. That's all that's in Coldwater, Mississippi.
Wow.
So we were out in the middle of nowhere, moved away from all of our family and everything, and we were super isolated, and all of us were homeschooled, so it just continued to get worse.
Yeah. Lots of sheltering and missed experiences.
Yeah. So I definitely feel like I missed stuff. And that, watching my mom and my stepdad's relationship like that, taught me what I didn't want and what I would not put up with in a relationship. And so when I went off to college, I started dating, and the first relationship that I was in was pretty much the same as my mom and my stepdad, because of course it is.
Yeah,
because
even though you were wanting to try to not do it.
Even though I was like, I see all these red flags, but I'm going to ignore all of these. It's fine.
That won't happen to me.
No, it'll never happen to me. But I learned a lot from that relationship too, about what I wanted and what I didn't want, and who I am as a person, because I didn't really get to figure that out at all as a kid. It was like, this is your role and this is what you do. So I didn't get to figure out like what I wanted to do. So I just kind of did whatever I was told to do, which was going into nursing school and staying at home and not moving on campus and doing all the normal, you know, 19-year-old kid stuff. I didn't get to do those things until I moved out. And I went a little wild for the first couple of years, not gonna lie. I did all the things that I missed out on.
Had to catch up.
I had to catch up, exactly. So, you know, I did a lot of stuff that I kind of regret, but I learned a lot from it, and I learned who I am and stuff that's important to me. And also how to set good boundaries with family, because we're never taught that at all, especially with family. Like it's always family is supposed to be the closest people to you, and they're the most important thing, and they're always going to have your best interest at heart, and that's not always true for everyone's family. That's definitely not true for a lot of people in my family.
No, not at all.
Like, I can 100% count on my mom now. Not so much when I was a kid. She was definitely like under my stepdad's thumb, and whatever he said went. The man is the man of the house kind of mentality. Exactly. Exactly. It's the same way I feel now. Like, I could never. What
do you think? This is probably a dark thought, but what do you think would have happened if you like had never gone to college? If you'd like met some Coldwater, Mississippi small town boy and like
stayed there?
Yeah.
I don't want to think about that, to be honest.
Yeah. Just a random thought that popped in my head. Sorry.
I do not want to think about that, because I did date guys around there a little bit when I was in high school, but there really weren't a lot of people. And because of where we lived, we lived on 10 acres. So it was 5 acres to even get to anybody else, to neighbors or anything. And all of our neighbors were like older couples, and they didn't have like young kids or anything. And if they did, they were all, off at college somewhere.
Right, yeah.
So like that wasn't even really a good possibility.
Good. Sorry. Random thoughts.
I mean, yeah, but again, I really don't want to think about what would have happened if I never...
You'd have like 7 kids by now.
Yeah, probably.
Probably. I probably would have ended up...
cows.
Probably. I probably would have ended up dating the first... or like marrying the first guy that I started dating, which was a bad idea.
Yeah, but it happens so many times that like we end up repeating the same mistakes that our parents make, and especially women and moms, or like daughters and mothers, we end up repeating the same patterns that our moms do, and like finding the men that our mom like. Yeah. And it's so crazy that happens over and over and over again. So you see these like generational patterns. Yeah. And then but sometimes people get out of it. Yeah. And they choose someone totally different.
Yeah. No, my mom would not touch my fiance now. Like anyone that's close to him, like anyone that's even remotely like him at all, never. Yeah. Because she tends to be attracted to the manly men that are gonna like be in control and like just the man of the house. Yeah, the dominant kind of personality. And I have a very dominant personality. So
you had to be a mom at 11,
right?
You had to step that authoritative stuff up.
Yeah, and I have a very dominant personality, and dating another dominant personality is not going to work very well.
Yeah. So that's kind of the other question that I had. How did it affect you making friends? Like, was it easy to make friends? Was it like, dude, you don't know what's happening in my house? Like, because at 11, 12, 15, 16, we don't really have problems. And, when you think of like normal
normally, yeah.
Right. It's like, who are we dating this week? Oh, this person went to the movies without me, like that. Oh, that's so sad. They unfriended me.
Yep.
Yeah. And
they moved me out of my MySpace top 8.
Yeah. These days it's like, they stopped their streak. Right. They left me on red. Like, it's not, how am I going to feed my child brother this morning?
My child brother.
Yeah. So did it make it really hard to relate to people on like a friendship or dating level?
Well, my situation is different than Amber's. We not only we moved every like 2 years, if not consistently, but I went to 4 different high schools. I don't even know how many elementary schools. And we didn't just move in the same state. We moved state to state, like all across the country. All West Coast. We went up to North Dakota. We went back. We moved so much. So my definition of friends, I didn't have any. I would make really good friends, like with neighbors or something.
Yeah.
and then we'd move. So I have scattered
Well,
friends.
that's hard in itself.
Yeah. Like Arizona, California. And I would be young, so I would move and like write letters. But we didn't stay friends. Yeah, we wrote letters. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then middle school, I had a consistent friend throughout middle school, and then we moved again. I mean, so there were times where I would be at home, and like I remember my friend, we would ride our bikes together to middle school, and she'd ride, and I'd be like, I can't go to school today. I got to stay home and watch the kids. And so her mom kind of was like, maybe you should have, Amy come out to our house for sleepovers, not have her come over. Because she knew, but I only had like one friend anywhere. I was super shy, actually. I didn't talk to anybody. I was timid and just this little, I would do whatever anyone would tell me what to do. And so as I got older, started to get my voice more, with dating, a lot of men were impressed, and they ended up being my third child, actually. So it was a weird thing. Like, I would meet a guy and they'd have their shit together. They'd have a job, they'd like have ambitions, and then all of a sudden I'd let them move in like, a month later, and I'd end up taking care of them, and they would just become losers. And I don't know,
That's so weird.
That happened at least 3 times. And then I was like, okay, no more, moving them in. Gotta,
Yeah. They saw you and they were like, oh, she's got her shit together. Let me just fall apart a little bit. Thank you.
Pretty much. And I don't know if I don't know what happened. But then I didn't date. So for the majority of the time in my 20s, there was a good chunk there that I didn't date at all whatsoever. I was focused on working. I went to nursing school too. And I was working full time, but the pay, actually, I couldn't afford to be an LPN was what I got. And then I was going to go on to be an RN. Yeah. But honestly, I had an awesome job and the benefits were great. And I was like, I don't even need to go to school right now. So plus it was stressful.
Nursing school is
I want to do a study. Like, does everyone with troubled childhoods go into nursing school? Is that what it is?
It's got to be. Because there's got to be some kind of correlation here.
Yeah, I can think of a few people, like, off the top of my head that like, they had kind of crummy childhoods. They went to nursing school. That's interesting.
Well, I went because my mom wanted to be a nurse because back in her day, they wore cute hats. My mom and me are completely different. She used to be into style. Like, she had to have the top of the line everything. She said she always calls herself a brat when she was like a teenager. But yeah, she was like, they have cute uniforms, and she wanted to be a nurse and she never made it. So she always told me, you should be a nurse. They pay well, and
you get to wear cute clothes.
And you get to wear these cute clothes.
Super cute hats.
So it was kind of in my head until I started to make my own decisions. And I thought, I don't really want to do this. Then I went to social work. So I did that recently.
Yeah. I think it's the other path that people take if they have crummy childhoods.
The caretaking thing.
Nurses
I think that's
or
what
social
it
workers.
is.
Yeah, there's got to be some kind of correlation because, like, I went to nursing school initially. And once we got into the whole, like, bodily fluids, needles kind of thing, I was like, yeah, this is not for me. I need to dip out of this real fast. And went into psychology and now, counseling. And that's a whole nother story for another day for why I went into psychology, specifically with counseling. But, I do think that's got to be connected somehow because my mom had a really shit childhood too.
Well, yeah, it's generational.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's one thing I learned in therapy was the whole generational pass down. And you look back and it's way back to the great-grandparents where they just passed it down.
Yeah. Well, it's like, nature versus nurture. We're going to mimic and replay the things that we see. And so if you don't have like good coping skills demonstrated for you, you probably aren't going to have good coping skills yourself. And if you don't see good relationships, you probably aren't going to have good relationships.
Yeah.
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 So what about you with friends?
Making friends was difficult.
Well, not being able to leave your house, for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely. Being stuck at the house and living out in the middle of nowhere, being homeschooled. Yeah, I had friends. I always have been a big social butterfly. Like, I make friends with anyone and everyone everywhere I go. I used to get in trouble a lot when I was in elementary school because
For talking?
Yeah, because I would talk to the people around me. You'd never guess.
Crazy.
And they would move me. 'Cause she's not going to talk to these people. She's friends with these people, so we're going to move her over here. And then in 5th grade, they got the bright idea to move me and sit me with all the boys. And that didn't stop anything. Like, I was
Right.
still going to talk
Best
to them. We're all best friends now. I'm still friends with some of them on Facebook, like, to this day.
That's awesome.
And we still talk. And, you know, 5th grade. Who would have guessed? But yeah, I used to get in trouble a lot for being friends with everyone. And when we still lived in Memphis, there were neighbor kids and stuff that I grew up with or that I knew that would be around like during the summers and stuff because their grandparents lived close to us. So I still had some friends until we moved out to Coldwater. And then it was nothing unless I made friends online, which is why I'm so like into the internet culture and like all the YouTube and Reddit and Discord and all of that. And even now, like, that's where a lot of my friends is online. Because that's how I made friends when I was in high school. It's the only way I could.
Yeah.
And my online life is vast and all over the place because I just made friends with everybody.
I remember AOL chat rooms.
Oh yeah, I remember that. AOL chat room,
Sitting and waiting, it's like beep beep or whatever noise it made,
Yeah.
like connecting to the internet.
Yeah,
Yep.
those god awful dial up.
Yeah, dial up.
Oh, I can't imagine out there in Coldwater, Mississippi.
Oh my god. If you wanted to load a picture, you'd probably wait at least 48 hours.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was rough.
We didn't have a computer, like, at all.
Yeah. My dad, his job was based on computers, so we always had
Oh, sweet.
different stuff in the house. And as they upgraded at his office, he would get to bring stuff home. So
Yeah.
we had computers early on, but he always had the best.
We're making
That's
ourselves sound really old, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Pre-cell phones.
We're not even that old.
I know.
Like, yeah, no, we're not even that
But
old.
it's crazy to think that it wasn't even that long ago, and then
Right.
look at how technology exploded.
Yeah.
That's our
Exploded.
life.
Yeah, and now it's all
surrounded.
right here.
Yeah,
This little
like
tiny device.
I very distinctly remember when we got our first computer in the house. I was like 8 or 9, I think. And it was one of those that literally all you could do was type on it. Like, that was it. That was all it did. There was no internet or anything like that.
Yeah, you played solitaire and
Solitaire
Oh, I
and
love
paint.
solitaire.
and paint.
Paint.
Yes. Such an underrated application these days.
I know. Everyone
I still
makes
use
fun,
it.
right? Everyone makes fun of MS Paint because, you know, everyone has Photoshop now.
Yeah.
But I had a good time back then with MS
Oh
Paint.
yeah, I would just take little. We're so off subject, but I would just take the little tool and just like color the whole white part in, not even drawing anything.
Yeah, so we also had this, and I know this is totally off topic, but random childhood memories here. We had this application that was on our computer too that was called Kids Paint. And it had these really cool little things that you could do with the cursor. And it would like draw
Fun.
all over the screen and stuff. So you could like make the cursor be like a rainbow and it would like leave a rainbow trail
Oh, that's cool.
across the screen. It was super cool. And I played with it way too much because I had nothing else to do.
Right. All right. Back on subject a little bit.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit more about how you feel like this having to raise your siblings affected you, like mental health wise, like anxiety, depression, anger, perhaps.
Oh yeah. I'm just going to go ahead and step in on that anger. Especially back then, I had a lot of anger. And it'll still kind of come up now sometimes. And it was hard to like express that because no one else really understood what I was so angry about. But because everyone around me was still like, yeah, I'm a kid, I get to do all these kid things, and I'm just like, can't relate. I don't get to be a kid, and that really sucks, and I'm angry about it. But what helped with the anger therapy and rage rooms are a great thing
For sure.
and then I've always been an anxious little thing, like forever, all the time. It just is always there. But I definitely think that it made it worse and not better because, you're supposed to be able to rely on certain people in your life, especially as a kid. And when you can't, what else do you do? And, they put so much responsibility on me as a kid, and it definitely created a lot of anxiety because how do I feed them? How do I, make sure they get to school on time? How do I make sure they have their uniforms? How do I do all of these things? And I'm 13,
Yeah. Insane.
Definitely a lot of anxiety there. Depression didn't really kick in until college, but that was probably something different.
Not related.
Unrelated.
Yeah. Okay. All
Amy?
right. Anxiety, anger. Yeah, for sure.
So I actually would say being in the position that I was in raising them saved me from dealing with any mental health issues. So because my childhood was shitty just so much more, even I'm not having to do with raising them.
Yeah.
It was just not that great. There was no happy memories. So having the responsibility to take care of them actually gave me a reason to live, and a reason, like, that was my purpose. And so it wasn't until they were out of the house that my mental health went like, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was super anxious, and what had happened was I didn't deal with anything because I was so busy, and my life revolved around them, and they were teenagers when I got them back, 9 and 13. So I didn't deal with any of my mental health issues from my traumatic childhood until a couple years ago. And so I don't know what it would have been like. I feel like I would have experienced more depression and more anxiety, but through that whole time I just like barreled through it. I ignored everything, and I just I didn't sleep. I was anxious, but a lot of that, I was super worried. My brother got into they both had their own issues. He got into drugs and like gang activity and like in and out of the juvie system. So I was always worried he would die ever since I got him, because that's how he acted out, was criminally. My sister, on the other hand, internalized everything and would hurt herself, and she would act out like she wouldn't talk about it, but you could tell that she was real anxious. And so it was two completely different ways that they dealt with it. And so I didn't deal with my stuff at all because I was...
Well, you didn't have time.
Yeah, I was completely... But I think that also saved me because, I didn't have to deal with it. So, I mean, I was happy. I just was busy. And then I remember there were months after they were gone, and I was like, oh, I'm going through empty nester syndrome right now. But really, I think it was more so I had time to sit and think about my shitty life, and it all piled on me. And I guess I would say depressed and anxious all at the same time. And it just, it took a few months to kind of get used to the new norm and start working on myself. I kind of dipped into my own therapy while they were going through therapy. But like I went through trauma. We all went through trauma therapy, like the TFCBT, which is 7 weeks or something, what it's supposed to be. Mine took 2 years because of all of their stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But
Yeah, and then you had to kind of figure out that purpose thing again.
yes. Yeah. So that was, that was my purpose in life. And then I realized your purpose isn't supposed to be external. So it actually boosted my spirituality journey on, you know, what my purpose was, and that it wasn't just them. So
Yeah.
it was.
Which I think is a good lesson for all moms of any age and circumstance, to understand that your purpose does not have to be your children.
I definitely revolved my life around them.
Yeah.
I would put them first. I was engaged for 4 years. Probably the biggest thing we argued about was I did put them first. And they had these needs. And
What was his issue with it?
well, part of it, not that it was more so I wasn't consistent. So things would be changing all the time. And if, like, say, me and him had plans to do something and one of the kids needed something, I would cut our plans off for them and cater to their needs and be like, no, they're number one, you know. And it wasn't even anything big. It'd be like, I can't even think of an example, but they needed a ride. I think a lot of that was we had plans to hang out, date night or something, but one of them would call and say, I need a ride to so-and-so, and I would interrupt our hanging out to go deal with the kids. And when he's like, no, this is no. And looking back, I mean, he was right in that aspect of I could have modeled better boundaries for them, you know, not
Be there for them at the drop of the hat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of on the other hand of that. I think it's hard to understand that mindset if you don't have children or you're not in a parental role. That whole, like, I'm sorry, but you who I'm dating are not the center of my world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These children are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, and at, you know, the age that you were still pretty self-centered, pretty, you know, focused on pleasing ourselves, that it's hard, I think, to just kind of put yourself in those shoes if you don't have to be. I think when people become parents, like a flip switches and like you get into that role. But if you don't have to be in that role, it's hard to understand it. How easy it is to just be like, nope, my plans are done now. They need me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the first guy that I dated in college, I still went home every weekend because my mom was working night weekends at the time. And my stepdad was out of the picture at this point, and, you know, someone had to be there for them. And we would have plans to go on date night or whatever, and mom would call and be like, hey, I need you to come home this weekend because I can't find anyone else to watch the kids, and everything's canceled because they were more important than anything else I had going on. And that was a big source of contention with us for the 2 years that we were together, because he felt like my life and what I had going on was more important, and that I should prioritize other things above them, and didn't really understand, because he never had to be in that position. Like, he had younger siblings, but he didn't have to be that kind of responsible with his siblings, and never really understood that. And I mean, and you're right, maybe he was right in some of those aspects. Like, I should have maybe put myself first a little bit more often than I did. But at the time, I didn't really feel like I had any other choice, because my mom didn't have anybody else, and I was it. So I just felt like that was kind of my duty as, like, someone who helped raise them. I mean, the youngest called me mom until he was 4, because he didn't know the difference.
How'd that go over with your mom?
Not well. Not well at all. He slept in my bed too until he was 4 years old. We shared a bedroom, and he called me mom and slept in my bed until he was 4 years old. And And that's when we moved out, and he had his own room, and he would still, like most nights, try to come into my room and sleep with me because that was the only thing he knew.
Did you guys ever, like, I'm sure you did, feel like face judgment from people in public?
Oh,
See you
yes.
with the kids?
Yes.
I remember being out in public mainly at parks and stuff, but I don't know that I was ever out in public where it looked like I was the parent. I was at school, or I was home or working, but I didn't have it was like just 3 kids at the park playing, and the parent could have been somewhere. I didn't like take them grocery shopping or anything. Like we just didn't have food. I mean, I didn't, and when I was younger, I'd carry Sierra around like they thought she was a doll. Like, because I was like 8 years old and I'd be like dragging her around.
Right.
I just thought it was cute, you know? But, and I was private, like in high school when I had my own apartment and everything. I was 15. Nobody knew. Like, I didn't tell anybody. I had one friend, and I was so private, and like I did not talk to anybody. I was super scared. So I didn't face judgment. Plus, we moved all the time. So
That's true.
Yeah, no, I would take them to the grocery store or something with me because no one else was home, so I had to. And I got lots of crazy looks considering I was like 14, 15.
But you were home during the day too.
Yeah.
Like I went to school.
Yeah,
And
I
we
was
went to
home
school.
during the day and stuff too. So I would have, like a 2-year-old on my hip and a 5-year-old in the basket, and I was by myself.
Looked like a young person with bad decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
So I would
sucks.
get some really crazy looks, especially like when we moved out to Coldwater. Very small town, lots of judgment.
Yeah,
So yeah, I got a lot of crazy looks and stuff. No one ever really said anything specifically, but I could feel the judgment.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you can feel when people are staring you down. Yeah. Okay. So just kind of like wrap up, if you could give your younger self advice, what would you say? And then I guess advice on like how to handle the whole situation
I would definitely tell my younger self, you're doing the best that you can, and what you're doing is good enough, because I often
that gave me chills.
felt like I had no clue what I was doing, and I was super hard on myself, and I wasn't doing enough for them. I wasn't being a good enough sister parent. I didn't love them enough. Like I was going to screw up their lives, but really all they needed was consistent love. And I gave them that. And looking back now, some of the stuff that they do and say, and I see like that was from me. Like, you're going to be proud of this one day is what I would. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
All right.
I wish someone told me that.
Yeah. I mean, just hearing the words, you're doing good enough, it can be immensely powerful.
And not just you're doing good enough, you're doing everything you can.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I definitely did too, was like beat myself up a lot. You're not doing enough. You're not there enough. You're always thinking about like, I want to go do this or that or whatever, and you should be happy to be here with them. But if I could give myself back then any advice, it's do everything you can, but don't make everything your responsibility. It's not only up to you. And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to do it by yourself. You're not in this by yourself. Ask for help.
Yeah.
That's something I
Well,
had to
think there's
learn.
like a level of like secrecy and shame when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like,
yeah.
you want to protect
Yeah.
your family, even though it's kind of a messed up situation. Like, you don't want other people to know that it's a messed up situation. So like you keep it to yourself. You try to protect your family from that, from judgment or from pity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely felt shame because I mean, it was a really shitty situation, and it was shitty relationships and just really bad mental health situations as well. And, you know, they were going to continue the cycle with my younger brothers. And that's essentially what I was trying to step in and stop from happening. And, you know, they did not model very well at all. And, you know, like you said, I see things that they do or say or things that they're striving for, and I'm like, that came from me. That's me coming out of their mouth right now.
That's awesome.
And it's super weird sometimes to see that kind of stuff, but it's also like, it makes me really proud.
Yeah. And like some of the stuff you guys are saying, I hear from my friends who are biological parents. Like they don't feel like they're good enough or doing enough, or that they know enough, or that they're patient enough. And so like, I'm really glad we're having this conversation, because people, I think, have a hard time with understanding that parents don't have to be biological. And I know like adoption is, you know, praised and all that good stuff, but there's something about like I don't know how I want to phrase that. There is a special bond between you and your biological offspring. I get that.
Yeah.
But it's not the only way to have these feelings and the connection with another human.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't raise siblings, so I can't accurately describe it, but the way that you guys are talking about raising your siblings is very similar to the way that I hear people talk about raising their kids. And it's just important to know that families come in all shapes and sizes and
situations and circumstances. And also, advice for general parents out there: you're never gonna know enough, because children don't come with instructions at all. You just have to know that you love them and you're doing everything you can.
Yeah, I mean,
and just keep doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Like Amy said, what they really need is just that unconditional love, that you're knowing that you're going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You can do all sorts of things and try all sorts of fancy techniques, but in the end, it's really all it comes down to. Do they have a safe place to land? Do they have a safe place to express how they're feeling and things that they're thinking, and know that everything's going to be okay?
Yep, someone to rely on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out and chatting, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.